Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. Coming up on today's show, is it time for Trae Young to start the buy-in?
And some may call it an overreaction Monday, but after the Falcons fell to 5-8 yesterday, is it really?
And was it time for Prime in Colorado? We talk about all that next right here on ATL Day Ones. Let's go.
This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Just want to say thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. And remember, we're free and available wherever you download your podcast. And wherever you download your podcast, make sure that you leave us a 5-star review. Today's episode of ATL Day Ones is brought to you by Bet Online T. Whoo, it's a lot to talk about. But I think Friday night was something that we got to kind of little peek into as to what this team looks like without Trae Young. And, for those who don't know, Trae Young got into a little spat with Nate McMillan. Nate McMillan gave him a little ultimatum as far as, hey, either you come out for shoot around and you come off the bench tonight and come to the game, or you just don't show up to the arena at all. And Trae decided to say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to be at the arena, and he was out there live tweeting the game like we do when we're not at the arena at State Farm Arenas, and that was kind of weird. But T, I think the main thing is that I like how the team played, the type of basketball that they played. The buy-in was there, the rebounding, the moving the ball consistently. I think all of those things were there, and we saw DeJounte Murray running that ship, right? And I think that DeJounte Murray understands what Nate McMillan wants in his offense, and a lot of people have questioned that, and I think that we got to peek into it. But is it time for Trae Young to kind of say, you know what, this might actually work?
Yeah, there has to be some maturation on Trae's part from all of the indications I've received, whether it was what I've read, what I'd heard a few times before this, because this is not the first time. This is really
Not
just
at
the
all.
first time we're finding out about it and getting a sneak peek into it. But Nate McMillan has been able to make a shift, right? He was
Right.
known infamously for not wanting to play rookies and certainly would not give a
Yes.
rookie heavy minutes, as we saw last year with Jalen Johnson. Two things. Number one, AJ Griffin plays. Number two, AJ Griffin gets a lot of minutes. And number three, Jalen Johnson has played quite a bit to start this season as well. So we see a shift in Nate's philosophy because he understands that there are going to be some things that worked for you maybe previously that won't work now, or some things that may have worked to get you a winning record in the regular season, may have even got you into the first round of the playoffs. But since that is not acceptable to Tony Ressler and company, you're going to have to make some shifts in order to get to where they want you to be. I don't know that Trae has made those shifts quite yet. And I think that's something that, in all fairness, because, I always use this example with Michael Jordan, not everybody is going to do what he did as far as, hey, it took me 5 or 6 years, a second coach, a Robin. All of these things had to come together for him to get his first championship. But
Right.
there were some bumps and bruises and some temper tantrums along the way, trust and believe. And then there are others like Dwayne Wade, who, when Shaquille O'Neal joined the Heat, he was fine if it was a co-partnership or if it was just Shaq's team. LeBron, Chris Bosh, they joined the team. He was fine giving it to LBJ, even though LeBron ended up saying at the end of the season, like, bro, you got to play your game. That's the only way we're going to win a title. We are hoping that Trae is going to mature to that. But my biggest concern is, although everybody else seemingly has buy-in, as far as we can tell,
Right.
to
Yes.
what Coach Nate is preaching, if Trae doesn't, is that going to mean the end of Nate? I don't think it should, but I got to tell you, that's starting to make me uncomfortable about the possibility of him tapping out or him being tapped out of here and what that's
Right.
going to mean for the Hawks overall, not just about this season and kind of getting closer to the promised land, NBA finals, but the ability to even attract free agents to come here and continue to make this team better.
And to be honest with you, T, I'm right along with you because I think that's the biggest point in all of this, right? Is the fact that Nate McMillan was willing to change. And because, he's had some success as a head coach in the NBA. He's a
Mhm.
former player who had a lot of success as a player as well.
Yes.
So there's some reasons to kind of be stubborn, right? There, I obviously, with the expectations that, like you mentioned, wrestler and coming down from the top down, say, hey, we want to be able to compete. And I think there's a lot of pressure on everyone to make the necessary changes in order to be a team to compete. So and Trae Young doesn't need to escape that, right? He doesn't need to get an exception. He's not an exception to the rule. Like we say, if Nate can adjust by playing rookies and making those necessary adjustments to be in the 4th spot in the Eastern Conference right now, early on in the season, I think that Trae needs to make those adjustments as well, because he's not shooting well. So he needs to make adjustments to his game. We talked about this in our Highland Cigar pregame. We may talk about that a little bit later on the show, but we talked about this as far as how, Trae's mid-range game has got considerably better, and it's lethal. He can be lethal with that mid-range, because we've seen DeJounte, when he's got it, that mid-range going, he is absolutely ridiculous. And I think that Trae needs to start implementing that more. We talked about how he's getting the calls more. He gets the benefit of the doubt with the referees. Use that to your advantage as you work on getting that 3-point shot how you want it to be, and stop taking those 39, 40-foot doggone 3-pointers that you've been taking, this year, because you haven't been hitting those. No. I don't have a problem with you hitting them. If you hit them, cool. But if you're not, you need to make the necessary adjustment. And I think that Trae, at this point, I think it's because at the end of the day, I don't want to start talking about, Trae being 2 words, right? And we know what those words are, coach killer. And we don't want to start having those conversations.
No, because if you start having that conversation again, even if you kill this coach, then good luck trying to find another one who's going to be willing to come here. And then free agents may start saying, I don't know if that's a destination that I want to go to. And how long has the Atlanta Metro been waiting for players to consider the Hawks a landing spot, a true destination of free agency, right? So hopefully this will kind of smooth itself out. I really, really hope so. Because, this team has far too much potential for it to just be a disconnect between, the superstar and the coach.
Absolutely. We don't want those problems, especially not here in Atlanta, because we like Trae and I like Nate. So y'all need to figure that bad boy out. Figure it out. Now, they figured out the college football playoff. The Final Four is set T, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and Ohio State. Georgia will be playing against Ohio State pretty soon here. And the one thing that I have to ask you is, what are your thoughts? Do you think that they got it right?
Yeah, I think they got it right in terms of the 4 teams they put in. I don't like the seeding. I do not like the seeding, because if we're honest about it, TCU is probably the weakest of the 4. Right. Therefore, they literally should have been positioned against Georgia, because you're number 1 undefeated team in arguably the toughest conference in the nation. And you have an opportunity to do something historic, which would look good for the CFP. I mean, what's bad about that? Right. Why wouldn't you get the easiest path? Because the CFP does not like repeat performances. They do not like round 2 of anything. So they weren't going to put Michigan against Ohio State, because they don't like seeing those those revenge games, if you will. But I'm here to tell you, I don't like the seeding at all. And I think, honestly, the CFP may have missed an opportunity, because, Dogs fans were going to come out regardless, because they see their team as the ultimate champion, right? But Michigan and Ohio State, man, I just feel like they missed an opportunity in the festival. Yeah, exactly. Because how much would those fan bases have traveled for Michigan just to be able to be petty and say, we got you twice in the season, or for Ohio State to say, you may have got me in the regular season, but guess what? Tap out of this national convention conversation, and we're going to put you, national conference conversation. We're going to put you out of the national championship conversation. That to me would have been so compelling, but that's just me.
I mean, I look at it from this standpoint, right? I think about the repeat performances that we've had, or repeat matchups that we had. Georgia and Alabama, those were great. I thought those were great. Alabama spanked Georgia, then Georgia came back and spanked them for the national championship.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times you can't control when they played. And thankfully they end up playing the national championship because the
Mhm.
college football playoff committee can say, hey, we didn't schedule that. That's
Right.
how it ended up. We ain't got nothing to do with that. But I think that if it's a scenario where TCU loses to
Mhm.
Kansas State, and I understand why they kept them in the playoff because they beat Kansas State during the regular season, so to
Right.
speak. So I get that. I understand that notion. But yeah, go ahead and drop them down to 4. And
Mhm.
hey, if you belong, beat the big dogs.
Yeah.
Pun intended. So
Right.
I think if it's a rematch, that is an easy sell, especially that rivalry, Michigan, Ohio State. My goodness,
Exactly.
absolutely, and on a neutral site too. So yeah, that would have been the perfect scenario for me,
Mhm.
at least, because hey, you can
Yeah.
justify Ohio State leapfrogging TCU because they just lost, right?
Yeah.
Keep them in the playoffs, and you have Ohio State jump up to number 3, and
Mhm.
hey, and let those guys battle it out, and then you may get a nice little matchup in the national championship game.
Mhm.
So those are my thoughts, and I'm with you because there's ways you can do it and you can sell it, so to speak, because that's what it
Yeah.
is, right? We're
Oh,
selling
yeah.
these picks because they're picking who the teams are going to be in the playoffs instead of playing like normal folks would do, and
Yes.
just hey, you get a round robin of teams, a certain amount of teams, and throw them in
Mhm.
there. They make it. You have the qualifications to get in, and whatever happens after that. So given the way this playoffs is set up, they could have easily done that, and I think there would have been no issue on my end. But last but not least, I have to mention this. Shout out to Fred McGriff for getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame. I know some people may have. I don't say a lot. I'm not gonna put that out there. Some people may have an issue with Fred McGriff and how he got in, and saying that hey, he didn't. He might not deserve to get in, but I'm not that guy. I'm going to
Yeah.
say that hey, if 7 home runs kept him from coming out of the being out of the Hall of
Right.
Fame, his peers voting him in, I'm all for that because like we know baseball is a numbers game, right? If you
Mhm.
get
Mhm.
3,000 hits, 500 home runs, you're getting
Yeah.
in there.
You're
You're
in there.
getting in there. It's
Yeah.
almost a guarantee. So if you telling me 7 home runs is the difference between somebody getting in and not getting in,
Yeah.
I don't agree with that, T.
Yeah, I just don't understand what that rationale was. But again, I don't know if many of us understand quite the way that the thinkers of Major League Baseball
The
and their
baseball
writers
purist.
association. Yeah, so right. I was trying to be nice and I really
Nah, I
wanted to
say
call them something else. But
it.
yeah, I just think at the end of the day, it's kind of confusing because it's like up, down, here, there, numbers that don't make sense. But I love something that our Locked On Braves podcast host, Grant McCauley, said. He
Right.
really threw some numbers out there on what Fred McGriff's numbers could have looked like had there not been a strike shortened season back in the
Right.
90s. And
Right.
he also gave you what those numbers looked like for different people, different players rather, who were in that same space and how much more it just impacted Fred McGriff, maybe because of strength of schedule or, whom you were playing, whom you were facing, so on and so forth, or how pitchers may have pitched to you, right? But
Mhm.
how many players without who maybe even over the 500 home runs or over the 3,000 hits, how many of them were in the top 10 for like 6 seasons straight? The
Right.
MVP race for
Yeah.
6 seasons, you were in the top 10. I mean, that's
Consistency.
pretty laudable. And then
Right.
30 plus home runs, all those seasons. So the consistency, I feel like, should have counted for something. But I tell you what, the new committee that's been put in place to honor those players who played like after 1980, they got it right because
Right.
they unanimously selected McGriff. And I think that was the telltale sign that, yeah, we all know he belonged.
And who are some of those people to question guys who actually played the damn game? Sorry. I mean, if I hate to invoke that, but that's what it is. All right. Now, speaking of something that, kind of on a lighter note, how about this? BetOnline.net is the place where you need to go. You know why? Because it is the easiest and fastest way to check in on all your betting needs, find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. T, I've been looking at the website. I've been checking things out. We just talked about the college football playoff. Georgia, Ohio State. Guess what? Georgia is opened up as the 6.5, a touchdown favorite. Oh, so essentially, do you think that Georgia Bulldogs should be a touchdown favorite? If you can't figure it out, you're kind of going back and forth. I don't know, what should I do? How about this?
Yeah.
Go to Bet Online. They continue to be the top online source for all your sports wager information, live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. You guys come to us for all your ATL sports needs. How about you go check out Bet Online to get in there to try to figure out whether you can win some money or not. They got podcasts right there for you, all the information you need. Now, head to Bet Online today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today, because Bet Online is where the game starts.
Now, if you are a team in the NFC South, we're not really sure where the game starts or stops. We're not really sure where the competition to win the division starts and stops. And we still don't know as of Monday. We may know a little bit more tomorrow because, of course, Saints Bucks play tonight. So that's still a critical game as far as, are the Falcons going to still have a chance to get in the postseason, or are they not? But feel like the bigger question that came out of yesterday's loss to the Steelers, 19-16, right there in the Benz Stadium, otherwise known as Terrible Towel Land. That was the craziest thing I'd ever seen in my life in the Benz. And we saw it, and we're just unbelievable. But really, the obvious thing that came out of that conversation, that experience, was the conversation that needs to be had. So Arthur Smith was asked 7 ways to Sunday, as he has been this entire season, about what's going to happen at QB. And here's what he had to say.
We got to get over this hump. So we got to look at everything. We got to get back to the other side of winning. So there's a lot of reasons why. It'll be good to be able to take a step back, but there will be changes made. We got to look at everything.
Whoa.
He's essentially saying that they have to look, and that is what they have to do.
Right. Yeah,
they have to look across all positions. But in all honesty, if you put together the answer to that question that our buddy Mike Rothstein asked and several others redirected, if you put those answers together, you know full well that this is going to be a conversation dedicated to quarterback. Because just as Jarvis, just as you and I said yesterday, if you look across the depth chart, I mean, where else is there even a possibility to make a change to the starting lineup, and B, the depth to be able to do it? So that's only one position, and that's QB1. That is it. And then Arthur Smith did follow up to say today that, and trust me, it wasn't anything that was more specific or gave us any intel, people, but the question was asked of him today, and he did kind of acknowledge more on that the conversation was more and the evaluation was more about the quarterback. So.
And I think that, like not necessarily because we've had these conversations before. I think that if you just look at different spots in that game, and I'm gonna lay them out for all the people who might think that Marcus Mariota does deserve to be the starting quarterback. If you all out there, I'm sure you all are. But anyway, I think the main thing was there were just so many points throughout the game where there was an opportunity to make a play.
Yes.
And when you think about going into halftime, there was a Drake London had run a comeback route overthrow, and then towards the end of the game, when they were driving and had the opportunity to go up, and take the lead, he had a throw to Drake London. It had no opportunity to catch the ball, overthrow, and it was just so many instances where. Now there was some instances where Marcus Mariota made a play, to Cardero Hodge. It hit him right in the shoulder pad. Should have caught it. That's the thing. But it was more so of what I just laid out before, as far as overthrows, missing reads, and from a footwork standpoint, your feet aren't even right. Like when you're making throws, you're not stepping into your throws. So that's why you consistently overthrow your guys. And we're not talking about little cockroach wide receivers. Like, I'm talking about guys who are 6'4" and 6'5", who have wingspans of NBA power forwards. You know what I mean? So this is something that we shouldn't be talking about when you're talking about a 7-year veteran. Now, going into his 8th year. You know what I mean? So I think all of those things kind of lay out when you look at it. And then to add to that, we have 2 back-to-back weeks of game of Marcus Mariota in the game with an interception.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And then also to add to that, how about this? The defense in back-to-back weeks hasn't given up over 20 points.
Yeah.
So you mean to tell me, with all this talent that you have drafted, all this draft capital you invested in this team, when I mean specifically pass catchers, and you still trying to sit up and tell me that your defense gives up less than 20 points in back-to-back weeks,
Yes.
that's a problem. If you can't take advantage of that,
Mhm.
offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith.
Yeah.
So, and I even kind of broke those guys down into two different hats, right? Offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. Yeah, okay, whatever. You can kind of, do what you need to do. But head coach Arthur Smith, this is who I'm talking to. Head coach Arthur Smith, you need to make a decision that's best for your team. And Marcus Mariota even put it best. I'm not saying he said bench himself, but he did say that the coaches have to make a decision that's best for the team, and it's time. It's time for Arthur Smith to make a decision that's best for the team. He made a decision coming in as we go along through the season. And I was right along with him. All right, cool. You don't want to put the rookie in there. I get it. I understand that part. But now it is time for you to make a decision that's best for the team going forward.
Yeah, because like you said, your defense did its job for the most part. It went bend but don't break.
Yeah.
And they've done that. Right. They've pretty much done that for 4 games. And you pretty much for 4 straight games scored under 20 points. And that's really not that difficult a thing to do. I mean, we're talking about, like you said, if you look at the opportunities, getting 3 touchdowns, because that would have won it for you yesterday. Heck, 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals would have won it for you yesterday, because let's not act like the Steelers were able to get more into the end zone more than one time.
Right.
But you couldn't do your job. And then, like you said, someone who's been in this league for 7 years. And don't get me wrong, Minkah Fitzpatrick is a dog. So he was probably going to catch that ball regardless. But you've been in the league for 7 years. There's no way in the world it should have been that easy. I mean, I could have picked that thing off. And that's a scary, scary thought, like for real, because no. But you look at it now, and it's an interesting thing, and we probably will have the conversation again tomorrow, because today is just postulating. Because honestly, if the Saints win that game tonight, we're right back to square one.
Yep.
And that could very much still complicate things for Arthur Smith, because then you're still in the playoff hunt. And what do you do now? Because again, we've all said we don't quite know the fullness of why they won't trot Desmond Ridder out there. But since you haven't trotted him out there quite yet, if you find yourself waking up Tuesday morning and you're still in the playoff hunt, will you trot him out? But let's say that with 4 games left after the bye week, that there is still some semblance of an opportunity because of what the Saints do. But at that point, you still can't, Jarvis, overlook what happened in those 8 games that are in the L column. So what do you do as a Falcon? As the Falcon staff, do you focus on continuing to push for the postseason with QB1, number 1 under the helm? Or do you say, you know what? We really need to focus on evaluating Desmond Ridder to determine if we need to go back out into the draft and draft a quarterback. And if he so happens to get us, keep us in the playoff conversation, well, then that's a bonus.
I think, I look at it like this. I think that the Falcons can do all of those things you just said, right? And make a change at the quarterback position. Because here's the thing. Arthur Smith knows who he is. He knows that they can run the football against pretty much any team in the NFL.
That was the 6th ranked run defense, and they were out there, especially the second half.
In that second half, oh my goodness. I'm like, wow, look at this. The Falcons were able to run the ball 7 straight times and got down to where they needed to be in the red zone with a chance to get into the end zone. Imagine that concept.
Right.
So my whole thing is, we talked about 1 or 2 plays or 3 to 4 plays in this particular game that Marcus Mariota could have made the right throw, and it could have changed the whole outcome of the game. We're talking about outcome changing type plays that he's missing. He's missed consistently. And I think that if you're going to stay who you are, as far as running the football as much as you possibly can and getting the ball in the hands of your playmakers that stand like this, stand behind the quarterback.
Right.
Why not? Because I feel like, and I'll go ahead and say this. I don't think, I'll go ahead and say it. I feel like Desmond Ridder can make those 1 or 2 throws that you need to make.
Yes.
And he might have a bad game overall, but I guess what? I know he can get those balls in there to where, especially that one towards the end of the game where you had Drake London with inside leverage on this man right there in the end zone. He's wide open. Oh my goodness. There's no way you just don't stick that ball in. I think Desmond Ridder can make that throw.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I feel like that's one of the reasons why I feel like you can get a look at where he can be. for next year and determine whether or not you're going to draft a quarterback or look at another quarterback in the 2023 draft.
Mhm.
And also, if the Saints so happen to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers,
Mhm.
hey, you can maybe continue to, hey, we're going to go out here and win and try to get into the playoffs. You can do both of those things by making the change, because I think that Desmond Ridder can make those necessary throws that can change the outcome of the game. And we've seen consistently throughout this season that Marcus Mariota cannot do that.
Yeah, and like you said, he did what he did with the blueprint for the Browns and basically stuck it to the Steelers and said, "Hey, I'm just going to run it every time, 7 times in a row." And kind of can do. And so if that's the mentality and if that's the strategy, and a strategy that's worked multiple times until it didn't work when you went away from it yesterday, but if that's a strategy that worked, right? And you look back at a team that was finding its identity when it played the Saints earlier in the season, and now it's going to face the Saints again. Got the they've got in terms of what they're going to do. Lamar Jackson, to be honest, you got the Cardinals who are in Trae, and then you got the Bucs. I think that those are winnable games with Desmond Ridder under center. The other thing that I think about is this: Locked On Sports today is going to tell you all the reaction that you need to know, because I'm sure that we have our take on what in the heck is going on with the NFC South, but I don't doubt that they have their take as well, looking at this division and wondering who the heck really wants to win it. So if you want to know about that, the biggest stories of the day, or you want instant reaction to the top stories, and not just in the NFL, but all across the landscape of sports, check out Locked On Sports today. Of course, after you check out ATL Day Ones, they have, just like we do, we got our For the Culture. They call theirs Take of the Day. So check them out. Again, right after you check us out, make sure you tap into Locked On Sports today, because it is definitely a good look for you.
Absolutely. And T, this is For the Culture. It is the intersection between sports, entertainment, and the culture, and sometimes whatever the hell we want to talk about. But that's how we get down today. T is no different. Now, we know it's been a lot of conversations, a lot of hot takes, a lot of stuff just flying off at the handle when it comes to prime. Deion Sanders, for those who don't know, had decided to leave Jackson State and take his talents to Colorado to coach the Colorado Buffaloes. And I have to take time to take this in, T, but your initial thoughts when you found out that Prime was getting on up out of there.
Yeah, I'll go with my positive thoughts first, because Black Twitter has more than gone for everything else.
Right.
And not just Twitter overall, but particularly Black Twitter. Come on.
Yes.
So
yes.
I congratulations to Coach Deion Sanders for getting that opportunity. Congratulations and thank you for the things that you did at Jackson State and for Black college football for the 3 seasons that you were there. I would argue with anybody that there's not a 3-year stretch in Black college football that has had the impact that the 3-year stretch of Coach Sanders has had, right?
Right.
That said, what troubled me the most is the timing. Now, I preface that with saying, I understand the transfer portal opened today. I understand that you want to get ahead of things with respect to recruitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of wanted to get Deion's voice and Deion's face out there with these guys. However, we're 12 days away from, and at that time of the announcement, kind of like 13 days away from the Celebration Bowl. The Jackson State players and the Jackson State program deserve to have the attention on them. The North Carolina Central players and their program deserve to have the attention on them. From this day to the day that the Celebration Bowl is played, all of the attention is going to be on what's Coach Prime doing. What's Coach Prime doing? Where's Shador? What's Shiloh doing? What's going to happen to Travis Hunter? But it's always going to be back on, the energy is going to be on Deion Sanders. And so that timing kind of troubles me. But how he can make this up to me and all of Black HBCU Nation is this. Now you're at a Power 5 school. So earlier in the season, you were talking about the challenges that Black schools faced when they were up against Power 5s, and how really with those penny ante checks that they were receiving, it really wasn't doing anything to give them any bounce or to make it worth their while. Hey, now you're a Power 5 coach. Let's see you make it worth their while by getting your Colorado Buffaloes to play an HBCU team and get some money back in their hands. Just saying.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. I appreciate you what you said, because first of all, I want to say congratulations to Prime as well, because I think that when you talk about the things that he accomplished while he was down there in a little bit, almost 3 years, right at 3 years, right? You know, you talk about him giving $150,000 of his own salary to upgrade the facilities, right? Nobody even said anything when he did that. They were like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, you're supposed to do that stuff and stuff." No, you don't.
Yeah,
He
no.
did it because he wanted to, and he did it because he wanted to back up what he said, what he told those kids, and right. And he got Walmart to fix the field and do what
Mhm.
they need to do. He got American Airlines to charter flights, you know, for those long road trips. And I
Yes.
understand what those long road trips are when you have to
Mhm.
out on the bus for 14 to 16 hours. I
Yes.
understand that. So it's huge. It's huge. So when I say I appreciate him for what he did,
Mhm.
I wholeheartedly I believe it to the bottom of my soul, and I don't think that he swindled anybody when he by
No,
all of the
no.
words that he told those kids, and even with
Yeah.
Travis Hunter as well. So
Mhm.
I think that, let me start there, but I
Mhm.
think that and let me go ahead and say this. I think T that I understand why people are upset.
Mhm.
Let me say this. I understand why people are sad
Mhm.
because of the light that the great. Let me say this. The greatness was
Mhm.
already there.
Yes.
The greatness was already there at HBCUs, and it's going to be there. It's going to remain there as Dion exits that stage, or exits that realm, right, and
Mhm.
go into the PWI world. Like, he's going to have to be able to exist in that world now, and
Mhm.
he's not going to be able to exist in that HBCU world, because we know what that world is. You and I
Yeah.
are both HBCU alum, and I think that for Prime to leave at this time, yeah, the timing is
Mhm.
bad. I understand it from
Yeah.
the Celebration Bowl and what that means, and the example of that, to have a guaranteed slot bowl game on ESPN every year for
Mhm.
those SWAC and the MEAC. That's a huge,
Mhm.
that's stuff
Yeah.
that I, if you talk to doggone 19 to 21-year-old Jarvis, I would have laughed in your face that you say that a bowl game was guaranteed to be on ESPN and you all had slots fitted just for your conference. So yeah, it's a lot. Like, this conversation, we probably won't be able to finish it because
Right.
it's just so
There's
much
a
that
lot to
goes
dig
into
into.
it. and I think that overall the timing is, yeah, it's a little bad. I can agree with that, but I think that Prime can continue this, right? By, hey, Jackson State or Southern, whoever, or Alabama State, come on, get this seven-figure payout to come up so we can get a game in. Let's go get a
Yeah.
game in, get this seven-figure payout, and y'all can go on about your business. And y'all can fund your entire athletic department in one game.
Right. And he has said that he definitely is bringing some of his staff with him. So that's going to be opportunities for those guys to coach in a
Yep.
Power Five conference. And it'll also give them an opportunity to get paid. Let's just be real. So we love that about it. And hopefully, and I do believe he's probably set Jackson State up for success. So whether or not one of his current coaches becomes a head coach, or whether he's kind of been helping them to vet his backfill, his predecessor, or his successor, excuse me. I think that ultimately speaking, when you look at it holistically, what he was able to do, how he leaves Black college football, it's still way better than how he left it, and how he got it, and how many of our parents have said, make sure that when you're walking away from something, you're leaving the house, so to speak. Make sure that you
Yes.
leave it in better condition than you got it in. So we give him a shout out for that. And hey, if there's more information or intel that comes to us for this, we'll get that back to you tomorrow. If there's any information, in addition to, of course, giving you guys a little pre-brief or debrief on Hawks Thunder, we're definitely going to bring that to you. Anymore on the Trae Nate situation, we got you. And if there's anything else going on in the world of Falcons football, and you know we got to talk Bucs Saints, we got you tomorrow.
Absolutely. And then as we leave, I want to leave you guys with what exemplifies that HBCU culture. Y'all make sure y'all come back now. You hear?
2, 4, 6, 8. Let's get country like Jackson State. Hey, Jackson, sounds like you need to be getting ready for a new head coach. I said the coach don't want you no more. I told y'all he wasn't swag. Coach Prime is about to be big balling.
Cue the petty.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys make sure you guys come back Now you're here. We'll see y'all tomorrow.